Mike, we are officially live. How are you? Midlife Money Moves, Michael Heron. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just traveling at the moment. Hopefully the connection's good. We were talking about it off camera. Hopefully this Hyatt place connections are good. But we'll see. I think we'll be all right. It looks all right
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah, it seems pretty good.
Appreciate it, man. And likewise. So we got Cesar. What's going on? Merry Christmas to you, sir. Happy holidays for everybody.
I
This is
love
gonna be
these
the last stream of the year.
I love these moments, like seeing people like that pop in. I'm like, oh, I watched that channel. Like I watch so many credit card channels that I'm very excited.
Yeah,
Like,
right. And yeah, they'll be in here for sure. They always have a
yeah.
card points, using it for free travel, all these awesome things. And this man in front of me also does that, but he has a slightly different way that he uses his credit cards in life. And from what I understand, you do have Amex Gold cards, you do have like the Blue Business Plus, you got a bunch of cool cards, but you have a little bit of a different story than maybe some people who are talking on camera nowadays. Someone that you know. So to introduce yourself, who are you, Michael Aaron? What do you do here on YouTube?
I'll do my blurb from my videos. I'm a 54-year-old ADHD adult musician living in New York City with an abundance of debt and next to nothing saved for retirement and a bunch of credit cards.
Yes. So of course, when you hear that, your first thought is, well, first, most people are going to say, "Man," right? You're
Oh,
like, "Man, you
yeah.
got a little bit of debt, you got all this stuff." I think you have a nice community though, because I look at your videos and you have this very podcast style. You'll have maybe 30 to 40 minutes long, and you kind of document your entire process of here's my budgeting template, here's how much money I'm allocating towards all my debts, credit card debts and stuff like that. And you literally document your progress on, okay, now we're down $1,000 here, okay, cool, down $1,000 here, paying off this bill, paying off that bill. And people are also in that situation. There's a ton of these people who watch these channels now who are in the points and miles game, uh, have been in massive amount of debt. A lot of us have been in debt. We've used our credit cards in that way, and we've figure out how to get ourselves out of it. So I like that you kind of give light to that side of it and how to get out of it in the first place. So I think that's great what you're doing, man, honestly.
Thanks. It's a little challenging sometimes because I tell the whole story. Like all my spending is up there, all my debt, like,
Yeah,
and yeah, sometimes it feels hopeful, sometimes not as much. But it's
definitely.
good. And the community, there's like a really strong community of people who are in debt on Facebook. I mean, on YouTube, who
Yeah.
are making these kind of videos where they just talk about like they're like debt confession videos. I don't know if you've seen these where people will be like, okay, I'm gonna do my whole list of,
Yeah.
and then people
Hmm.
jump in and like cheer you on. It's a lot more positivity than I expected in the
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah, because everyone's kind of been through that. I remember I was initially turned on to you by Sledge. Everybody knows
Oh
Mr. Do Your
yeah.
Research, and
Yeah.
he told me a story when he was on the podcast of that he was also in pretty decent credit card debt, and he was able to finally get out of it just through I guess a lot of hard work and whatnot. So he told that story, and he let me onto your channel, and I started watching, and I was like, this is very interesting. I also thought very inspiring, for a lot of people. So would you be able to go through, because I watched your videos, but some people might not have, would you be able to go through just kind of your life and exactly how you have gotten to where, like, how did you get started in credit cards? How did you get started with maybe loans, all that stuff that in the past?
Um, yeah. How far back should I go? Because I always have these moments of like, I'm kind of getting old. So it's a long.
A few years. What about from maybe most guys who I've talked to on the podcast who had that usually started around early 20s. Like it was 20, 21, 22. They got their first card. Was it similar for you?
Yeah, it was when I got my first credit card, it was like, I guess it was the mid 90s. And it's funny to
Hmm.
think back to that because you had to like write a check and put it in an envelope to pay. to like
Yeah.
pay your bill. It's so funny even think of that, even though I experienced that.
Hmm.
And it was a Capital One card. I don't even know which card it was.
Hmm.
But it was like a $300 limit, and I maxed it out. I can't even remember what happened to that card, honestly. Like I think
Hmm.
I I let it default, and then it just eventually went away. Like it must have gone
Yeah.
off my credit report because I have Capital One cards now, and they don't seem
Hmm.
too worried about that card I had in the '90s.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, like I've had a long like period. Like that was my last credit card until like much later, probably till maybe 15 years ago. And I think it was I got a Bank of America Capital Cash Rewards credit card,
Hmm.
which I have now. Is this the kind of detail we're looking for? Am I telling you more than you need to know?
That's okay. Whatever you want to talk about. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think like I had a couple rounds of like at that point I got that card and I had a Chase. I think it was a Chase Freedom card,
Hmm.
um, which I then like they just pretty much stayed maxed out because I didn't know really how to manage my money at all. And yeah, and I to me, and I just really got out of this of feeling like, oh look, a new credit card. Look how much money I can spend. Like this is great. They're letting me spend all this money. And I knew I had to pay it back on
Hmm.
some level, but it was always in my mind like, oh yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna figure this out. I'll fix this.
Yeah.
But then things happen and you're like, oh, I can't fix this. Like, some other thing happens in my life and I don't have
Yeah.
my finances in order. So I think during the pandemic, I kind of got caught up on all my credit cards. And that's when I started watching credit card videos.
Hmm.
And I started to get it a little better, but not really. Because I was like, oh, I can make points. But I still wasn't making that connection of like, yeah, but if
Hmm.
you're getting points and paying interest on these cards, that doesn't make sense. But it
Yeah.
took me a while to get that. So yeah, so maybe a year or so ago I started getting really serious about like realize like my finances really are bad and I'm just ignoring all of these problems. And I started like really working on budgeting and figuring out how to like start managing turning things around. And like I'm in my 50s, so there's that like retirement doesn't seem as far away as it did like 10 years ago. um,
Yeah.
so I think a lot of these different things really kind of came together to make me like, oh, I have to learn how to do this. Like, it's
Hmm.
not gonna just get fixed by me saying I'm gonna fix it one day. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at now, and I'm like learning how to, like, I use YNAB, the software you need to
Yeah.
budget, which is really helpful for me because it really forces you to categorize when you have money coming in. Like you assign it to different things, and that really helps me know, like, no, no, like you can't spend that. Like that's aside
Yeah.
for and it helps me learn how to use credit cards. And
Hmm.
yeah, so if I spend in a category and there's money assigned to it, it kind of moves it over to
Hmm.
payment land. So it forces you to either put the money aside to make a payment, or it tells you with a big exclamation point, like, you spent money you don't have. What are you going to do? Like, you have to fix this.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing is really like handholdy and helpful for me.
Yeah, I like that, and I've seen that on your spreadsheets and everything. I think doesn't go like negative or something like, oh, how are you gonna make up that difference and everything? Right.
Yeah, yeah. And they just did an update where it's even more aggressive, which is
Really.
great. Like, it's really good for me because it's hard for me to kind of keep that in my head. And when I look at it every day, it's like, okay, yeah, that's right. I have to make sure I'm able to pay this because I don't want to carry even I haven't been carrying balances, but like I want to always have cash on hand to pay my
Yeah,
credit cards all the way off.
for
Um,
sure.
and I know that's like what credit card people say and do, like people who are already credit card people. So
Hmm.
it's funny sharing that here because I'm like, hey guys, did you know like you're supposed to only spend money you already have?
Right.
But it was a
Right.
revelation to me. Like I didn't really get that at first.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a lot of people that watch. I mean, we all see our demographics on YouTube. There's a lot of people who are, just getting started, 18, 19, 20 years old. So I think hearing these messages are powerful before people are getting into the game, but they could, maybe do it the wrong way. And I think hearing messages like this or from Sledge, I think are or even Chad is great to hear. Just for people who aren't aware, would you be able to break down just how the debt kind of accumulated and how that breaks down? So I think the title was like 72,000. Would you be able to break down where that's coming from?
Yeah, like the whole list. That sounds so funny.
If
Yeah. I could kind of do a general thing of it. Um,
yeah,
so I have like a big chunk of that is it's so funny, like sharing this stuff in this
if you
way.
don't,
But no, but I
yeah,
want to. Like, I think part
okay,
of why I wanted to start the channel and why I like want to do things like this is to kind of destigmatize the idea that like people have messed up finances, and
yeah,
like people are in debt. So, but it is still a little like, okay, here we go.
yeah,
I have a ton of tax debt, like
yeah,
about $46,000 of tax debt,
hmm
and that happened like, my default has been to just like avoid stuff. Like, I mean, that's how this kind of happened. So, I work for myself, and I always have, and
hmm
I got behind because I was overwhelmed about the whole idea of like, I don't really know how to file my taxes as a self-employed person. And it's that same mental thing of like, yeah, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure this out. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I didn't figure it out. And now it's been 3 years of not filing taxes. And I'm getting a notice from the IRS saying, hey, where's your tax? Where's your tax money? So I got on top of it and I got on a payment plan. But through the course of those like following years between then and now, like I've been making these big past debt tax payments, which has made it really more challenging. That and the fact that I wasn't budgeting to like put money away for this year's taxes.
hmm
So I kept like owing, and then that money would get rolled back into my payment plan. I wasn't paying attention, honestly. In my mind, I was like, well, I'm making
hmm
these payments, they're leaving me alone, like everything's fine. And then my accountant last year,
yeah,
maybe 2 years ago, was like, this is getting bad. Like this number, she just sent me a chart. She's like, look how much more money you owe now. And to me, like the first number didn't seem like I could ever pay it off. So I was like, well, this is just another number that I don't think I could ever pay off. Like I was just looking at like, well, that's a problem I'll never be able to solve. But it just kept getting bigger. And she started talking to me about filing bankruptcy. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. Um, and so that's
hmm
part of what kind of like got me to where I am now of like, okay, I'm going to try to work this out. So anyway, that's how that tax debt happened. And then
yeah,
I have probably like $6,000 or so of like past credit card stuff. Some of
hmm
it's rolled into a consolidation personal loan that has
hmm
like, it's kind of high interest, but not as high as the credit cards were. And then
yeah,
I've been kind of like rotating. Actually, Sledge gave me this idea in one of his videos. Only he wasn't using it this way, but I was like, hey, wait a minute, that's what I could do. I got a Wells Fargo. I just did this recently, a Wells Fargo Reflect credit card,
hmm
and it gives you like 21 months of 0% interest. So I transferred some credit card debt onto that. So
hmm
it's kind of been interesting. Like, okay, so I'm in this kind of messed up debt position, but I have good credit and I'm learning how to use credit cards. So how can I like leverage that to kind of help me pay less interest, help me kind of like maneuver things around as I'm like getting things paid off.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very smart.
Yeah.
Um, I just wanted to recount. We got Joe Barreto here. He said he remembers writing checks to pay credit cards.
Oh yeah.
John is here. Mr. Bobby Yakuza, and Keith said, "You're not alone, Michael. America has over 1 trillion in credit card debt." Yeah, it's very, very, very common for sure. It's you
Yeah.
know, absolutely.
Thanks for saying that though. Like I think it's so important to like I there's this, I can't think of her name. There's someone I watch on TikTok who she talks about like household stuff, and her whole thing is like she always says things are morally neutral. Like this is just how it is. Like she'll talk about she's a
Yeah.
parent and she'll be like, look, here's my kitchen. It's a total mess. People are probably looking at this saying you're a terrible parent. She's like, this is morally neutral. I'm not a bad person because my kitchen is a mess. So I've been
Hmm.
trying to like think of that a lot. Like this whole idea that debt is morally neutral. Like we're all like, I'm in this situation. I made a lot of unfortunate choices, but that's just how it is. And I mean, I think there's that kind of shame and like regret and all those things that happen when you realize like, oh, this is a mess. Like I made a mess that stopped me from like taking action and trying to fix it.
Hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. I guess my first thought a lot of the times when I talk to people kind of in your situation, I always wonder because from what I understand, you've had a pretty interesting life. I guess on your website you mentioned musician, artist. So I guess what can you can play a lot of different instruments, right? And you,
Yeah, mostly piano, and I do electronic music too.
yeah,
And that's been really my focus for a long time. Like being a musician, I have a couple of albums out and books, and I teach. Teaching piano is my main source of income.
hmm. Because I remember on one of your videos you said you said I've never had a quote unquote real job. I think that's the words that you said, and it makes me think like sure, yes, okay, bad situation right now, okay, fine, but you're tackling it. But all of those years up until your age now, 54, you never really had to work. I guess necessarily what you would call maybe the corporate world or maybe the 9 to 5 that a lot of people would almost hate their lives for most of their life. But I almost sometimes wonder like, what do you really care about on your death on your deathbed? Like if you're 80, 90, 100 years old, am I did I have an amazing life? Or did I have a relatively boring life that was unfulfilled, even though I did what society says is the right thing to do? Obviously, I'm not advocating for dead. Nobody is.
Yeah,
There's a way to do both. But I just wonder, like, do you like obviously you have regrets, but do you ever think like, well, had I did a different route, maybe I would have been maybe much more unhappy at this point. Like, do you ever think about that?
yeah. I mean, of course. Like, there's a thing that you said. I want to remember, like, make sure I mention. Like, I think the part right now in my life that I'm worried the most about is the period between when I'm on my deathbed
Hmm.
and when I'm too old to work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like on my
Yeah.
deathbed, I think I would look back and be, but I am really becoming more and more conscious of the fact that there's going to be a period in there where I won't be able to generate an income.
Hmm.
And like, yeah, so I just want to throw that out there. But I think, as in terms of like regrets, I think the thing that I wouldn't have wanted to do my life a different way, like in terms of like making choices about pursuing music. I
Yeah.
think the thing I regret the most is not realizing sooner that I could do both things. Like I could, like now that
Hmm.
I'm learning how to budget and like set up a retirement account and all this kind of stuff, I'm a little bit like, oh, this is all I had to do. I mean,
Hmm.
I could have done this.
Yeah.
Um, but like there's that whole part that like I just didn't know. I didn't know how to handle that. And there wasn't like, I think the fact that there's so many like 20 something people on YouTube now who are doing like running their own content creation businesses and like having sort of alternative work lives that I can watch their videos and be like, "Oh, I have a job. Like this is a real job. I'm a teacher and I'm running a
Yeah.
business." But it felt like just this thing that I was like, "Well, I guess I'll just do this because
Hmm.
I don't have a real job." So I just sort of like defaulted to like everything. Well, I just don't get to have retirement. Like
Hmm.
when now like it's just changed a lot. Like it's changed. Like the work world has changed. It's much easier to
Yeah.
kind of pave your own way and start your own, you know, small business. And you can see other people who are doing it and how they're handling their money,
Yeah.
which has
Definitely.
helped me a lot. Yeah.
Well, the access to information now is just insane. It's just like like I struggle to find out how anyone did it pre YouTube because I
Oh yeah.
I everything I've ever learned in my life was on YouTube from
Oh yeah.
honestly it's I don't know 14 to now. It's just all YouTube and just seeing other people do it that are ahead of me and just like oh, okay, I can replicate that. Okay, cool. But otherwise, I don't know. How do you find these role models? Like all my role models in life all came on YouTube.
Yeah.
I just wonder how people came across any of that.
Yeah.
Maybe television. I don't know. Hmm.
It makes me think of like the pre like smartphone days, even pre mobile phone days, when like you'd be having a conversation with someone, and then you'd both say, "Oh, I wonder how, you know, XYZ happened," and it's like, "Yeah, me too," and then that was it. Like you just had to not
And
know,
you go back to
or
eating, yeah.
yeah, or go to a library, or like it would have to like go somewhere to find out. It's just funny.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Joe Barretto, He said, "Life happens. Sometimes you need to tread water before you can swim." And then Keith says, "The age that people retire is getting higher. People need and want to work longer. We live a lot longer than our grandparents and their parents." Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one thing I have going for me, like, because I really love teaching, and that's what my main gig is. So I'm not like desperate to retire. So that is good because it's not going to be anytime soon. But also, like, I'll be able to work longer and not be miserable about it for longer. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah. By the time you uh, get rid of a lot of the debt, or maybe you get close to retirement, you'll have a channel that you can work from home, and that would make enough income to sustain you throughout your, throughout many years. So
Yeah,
it's cool. Yeah, many avenues like that.
yeah.
Hmm.
You mentioned role models, and it made me remember. I want to make sure I mention. There's another YouTuber. Her name is Layla. She has her channel is Debt Over It, like DEBT
Mm,
over it.
yeah.
She documented her process of, I think it was $70,000 of debt that she's now out of. And she's
Wow.
a coach, and she's been coaching me. And she's great. I just wanted to mention her channel, Debt Over It, Personal Finance with Layla. Um,
Hell yeah.
so yeah, she's really a good person to watch. She's like low key and just like, all right, so here's the next thing I'm doing. But it's cool
Yeah.
because she's like saving. She has sinking funds for like new furniture, and she's starting up a like a scholarship
Hmm.
fund for people to get free coaching from her. Like she's doing a lot of things to kind of like reach back out to like the community.
That's great. That's great. That's
Yeah,
something you could very well do in the future as well. I'm sure.
yeah,
Um, that's once the following grows, of course. Um, One thing I wanted to come back to is something you said a little bit earlier, where you were like, um, the payment, like the payment had to be there, it had to keep coming, and then you just kept putting it off, like, oh, I got to take care of this, but then the time just goes on. You're like, then 3 years down the line, and then the taxes build up, interest builds up, and all that stuff. And I know a lot of this game is mental, and I found myself do that in my own life, just kind of put certain things off. I think a lot of people have. Do you have any advice for anyone that is kind of going through it on how to not put things off? Because it's easy to say, just don't do it, but it's a huge mental game where it feels like, I guess, the walls are closing in, and then it gets too much to even manage and just say, I'll leave it for tomorrow. Do you have any advice for people who kind of go through that thought process?
that's a really good question. Because I don't know. I mean, I've the thing that's working for me, I don't think feels like an easy solution. And that is
Hmm.
like I've been tracking every single expense. And
Yeah.
like every morning I'm like reconciling my bank account and my credit cards and like every like probably 5 6 days a week I'm like in my budget, like, okay, how's this going? Am I on top of things?
Yeah.
Partly because I'm kind of turning into a nerd about that stuff. But I think there's this like this fear of if I stop doing it for a week, I mean, maybe this is the advice. Like, if I stop doing it
Hmm.
for a week, I know it's going to be harder to go back in there, and then I'm going to want to start putting it off. And just in my experience, that's when
Hmm.
things start piling up, and they get worse and worse, which makes it harder and harder to look at them. Um, so I think the advice is like take a step about it right now, right? Like if you're feeling yourself going into this kind of place with something financial or really
Yeah.
anything that there's a problem, like find a way to like stop yourself from avoiding it. Like, okay, right now I'm going to just take whatever step. I'm just going to open the app and look at my bank account. Like, I know something is overdrawn. Like, I remember, and this really wasn't that long ago, it was probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago was the last time I overdrafted anything in my bank account, and I did it
Hmm.
all the time, and it just seemed like, well, this is just how my life is. And then
Hmm.
I would know something overdrafted, and I wouldn't have money to fix it. So I just like, okay, I'm just not going to look at that because it's too.
Yeah.
It stresses me out to look at it.
Yeah.
Um, but you kind of have to look at it. Like, I don't know. I don't know if there's any advice in there, but I think like just do it is the worst advice ever because like I know I'm supposed to just do it, but how do I do it?
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point. I honestly, and you say, is there any advice in there? Absolutely. What I got from that is, well, be aware. I think awareness is like the first thing. As long as you're aware of your situation, you're like, okay, this is what I do. So how could I not do that for the future? And the way to do that is to just be accountable. And I think you're doing that with YNAB. You need a budget. I think it's like anything. Like in the past, people have asked me, "Oh, how do I lose weight, or how do I gain weight, like muscle building, or I just want to lose weight?" And I'm like, "Okay, how many calories are you taking in every single day?" And said, "Well, it's not that much." I'm like, "Well, you're not tracking it, so you don't know. You have no
Oh
idea
yeah,
if you can gain or lose because you're not tracking anything." So I think it's the same thing with everything in life, but specifically money. Just as long as you have a good hold and like, okay, this is coming in, this is coming out. Like you said, tracking everything every single day, I think is probably the best. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. I think like I just did an end of year session with Layla, who's my financial coach. I
Hmm.
feel like I want to drop the name of her channel every time. Personal Finance with Layla. But we looked at my spending for the last few months that I've been working on her with her, and
Hmm.
looked at what my 2024 budget was. And so
Yeah.
we kind of estimated how much I would spend in each of these categories. And I got to the end of it, I was like, oh, I don't have enough money for this. I don't. This doesn't work. And I mean, that's the thing I want to avoid looking at, because I don't want to admit that, oh, you can't spend, this amount of dollars, because there aren't that many dollars. Like you have a goal to pay off debt, so those dollars have to go over here. So I can't think, like, I wanted to start a travel sinking fund, and I was like, oh,
Hmm.
that's not it's not in the budget this year. Like, if I want to pay this off and get out from under this, like, so I think the avoiding feels like it helps, because, or not looking at it feels like it helps, because like, well, I'll just do this and make it work. I'll just start putting this money away and just make it work. Well, it won't work. Like, the math says this won't work. So don't
Hmm.
do that. But I think it feels easier in the moment to ignore it. I don't know what point I was getting at with that. But I think
No,
it's just that. Go ahead, go ahead.
well, I would just be remiss. Keith gave us an amazing message to both of us. Said, 50 super chat. My God, like
Oh, it's so
I'm,
good.
I'm over here freaking out. Like, oh my God, Keith, what are you doing? He said, "Happy New Year's, everyone. Congratulations on the success this year, Anthony. I have to run." Oh my God, he drops 50 and runs. Like, come on. My God,
That's so
that's
nice.
jeez. I'm sorry not to cut off your
No,
your
that's a
your
thing.
your thoughts.
That's a thing to cut off
Whew.
for. That's so
Okay.
generous.
God, yes, Keith, thank you so much, sir. You're amazing, man, and absolutely happy New Year's to everybody. I guess this is the last live stream of the year, so this is definitely a lot of fun for me. Thank you so much, Keith. Wow, I'll hit you in the Discord too. I'll hit you with a huge thank you message and everything. My God, and appreciate everybody who's here. Of course, this is always great. Of course, Michael. Um,
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here.
Keith, appreciate you, man. Yeah, for real, coming in hot chat. Jesus Christ, it's crazy. And then he dashed. Um, MR came in. He said, "Learning to look at balances literally every day is the only way I was able to get out of debt and learning to invest." So exactly
Uh,
as you said. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It's
Uh,
I I I think like I'm trying to learn that. Oh, there's someone from my channel,
oh,
or
Minnie,
one of my
Minnie on
viewers. Yeah,
cam.
Minnie. Yeah, hi Minnie. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, I think like I'm learning how to get my little dopamine hits from, like, oh look, my accounts reconcile,
Hmm.
yay! Instead of like buying some random item on on Amazon. Like, it's really helping me to kind of like. I think that's part of what I get out of looking at balancing my budget so much.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah.
Hmm. Another thing I'm curious about as you're talking about this, still can't go over this, Keith, man. Appreciate you. One
I
thing I
love it.
wanted to think about was so my entire life, and I think some amount of people, the people I've talked to on the podcast who are actually in the points and miles game, more often than not, I found a lot of us share one thing in common. That's a scarcity mentality. So a lot of us from a young age are really afraid of just spending any money. So I'm still deathly afraid of spending anything. I guess it's just what you see growing up. But I found it fairly common. But I always wondered of the people who maybe spent a little more than me, who didn't have that like actual like fear, like I reuse everything. Wouldn't I have one pair of shoes, one pair of pants, something like that. Would you say you have a scarcity mentality, maybe growing up, or would you say you would spend and you just kind of go with how you felt at the moment, stuff like that?
I think it's kind of a combination. I had Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It's
Never read
it,
it, but I may have
yeah,
seen the title.
I can't remember. Oh, I guess it was maybe it was in a Reddit group. Anyway, a lot of people were recommending it, and I had a friend who I'd been kind of talking about money with,
Hmm.
and we decided to read it together and work through like his activities and stuff. But the thing that was really interesting and why I bring it up is that she had that kind of scarcity mentality in the way that you're talking about, where she was afraid to spend money and she had a lot of
Hmm.
money put away, but it was just
Hmm.
in like a regular savings account, and she was scared to invest it because she didn't know.
Oh.
So she had, the opposite. She had all this money that was just sitting around and not working for her. And I had all this debt. And it was sort of this way of like, oh yeah, like it's helpful for us to talk to each other. But the thing we both learned was like, oh, we're both afraid of running out of money. Like,
Hmm.
and her way of dealing with it was like kind of hoarding money and not like doing any, but not making like smart choices with it. So it just sat
Hmm.
in like a low interest savings account. But she was scared to do anything else with it because she might lose money in the market if she invested it.
Hmm.
And my fear, like, kind of came out in the opposite way, where if I did have money in my bank account, I was like, look, it's fixed. I have money now, so I could do whatever I want. I'm not poor. I'm wealthy. Like, look, I could spend this money. So I would just spend everything to kind of make
Yeah.
myself feel better about not having money, which like doesn't
Hmm.
doesn't match up. But that's kind of what. So I do have it, but I think I react by trying to avoid it and then kind of pretending my way out of it by spending
Hmm.
money. I,
That's interesting. I never considered that. I never considered that maybe, yeah, almost like maybe like you said, pretending. Like if you are a little bit low, almost like, do you think it's pretending for yourself or the people around you, or
um,
maybe both?
for me, I feel like it was just for myself. Um, and like when I look back at my like financial kind of patterns and the way I've always, even before I was teaching, like I teach piano, my students pay me in the beginning of the month, so I get this big chunk of money in the beginning of the month.
Hmm.
Same as when I was a waiter before that, I would get this money, be like, oh look, I have all this cash. I made $150 tonight. Great, I can go do this and this and that.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing the bigger picture of like, these are the bills that are coming up. Let me put this money aside for those, and that leaves this amount of money that I can do something with.
Hmm.
So I always had this kind of like, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Black and white sort of thing. I was either like, Rich, look, there's money in my hand. That means I have money and I can spend it.
Hmm.
Or I'd be like, oh, my bank account is overdrawn. And like that. Those are the only two ways I was thinking.
Yeah.
And now I've gone off at a tangent. I can't tell. I can't remember what you asked me.
I guess just the psychological thought of it. It's like, are you spending for to
Oh
pretending for
yeah,
yourself or for other people? But yeah. Hmm.
I think the
Seems like
spending
it's for
would make
yourself.
me. Yeah, I think it was for myself, and it just made me feel more like things must be okay with my money because look what I just bought. Like,
Hmm.
even though I
Yeah.
mean, when I say these things, it's kind of underscoring how illogical that is. But at the
Yeah.
time, I mean, I think that's kind of what was going on, like somehow emotionally about like, you know, I, I'm not lacking anything to see. Look, I have money I just spent, or I just went to dinner.
Hmm. That's interesting. So you feel like you have yeah, I could see that. So you have like a tangible thing. Like it's almost like you're converting you're converting the cash to a tangible thing that's like, I have this, therefore almost in a way like you feel like you didn't lose the money maybe. Maybe going out to dinner is different, but like you had that experience. So I have
Yeah, yeah,
on fire, it's gone. Like you did get something for it. Never considered that. That's pretty interesting. Huh.
yeah.
Um and Woodsy actually Woodsy's actually a guy. He was in the military. We had a podcast together in person one time, and he actually helps out a lot of other veterans who are in a similar situation. Who, came back. Maybe they're in debt, but he helps them get out of it. He said he understands what you're saying. He says, you have to remember you can budget your way to the riches with turkey and rice, which I love my turkey and rice. But I have found that you have to do things for yourself. I saved so much this year and left little time for me and literally budgeted my way into depression. New York accounts look nice, or my accounts look nice, but my mental health right now is trash a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's such a good point. I've been thinking about that a lot lately too. Like I mentioned, looking at my budget for next year and like, oh, I can't do anything. It's
Hmm.
not, why can't I think of the word? It's not something it's not sustainable. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like I don't want to get to a point where I'm like, you know what? My life sucks so bad when I'm trying to budget that I'm going to blow it off and just forget about it. Like, so it's definite like need for balance there.
Ability also feels like that same feeling, like all the walls are caving in. And I bet it's so easy to just give up. I bet it's just the easiest thing in the world to just say, let's just let it. Who cares? I'm just going to keep going the way I've been going. Um, so you would say for anybody that is about to have that feeling, that it's never a good thing to lean into it. It's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, like the feeling of like bailing on uh doing doing finances better.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
I think for me, like just in this last year, I mean, I feel like there've been a lot of like setbacks, and it's just been my own sort of like choices that were setting me back. But I think like just because my financial life is so much less chaotic, even though I have so far to go, I think just that is gonna help me stick to it. Like I'm
Hmm.
not having these moments like when there's a bill that's about to be auto debited from my checking account. I don't have these moments anymore where I'm like, oh my god, in 2 days, like this $500 charge is going to go through. How am I going to cover it? Like
Yeah.
that was like my constant way of thinking.
Hmm.
And just the fact that I don't do that anymore, I feel like is like going to help me stick to it. Because I mean, I didn't realize how bad it sucked to live that way, and I knew it sucked.
Hmm.
But now that I'm not doing it, I'm like, oh my god, I'm just letting my bills do their thing because I planned.
Yeah.
I It's one of those things. It's like, oh, like people have been telling me for years, like, oh, you have to plan. You need a budget. Let me help you
Hmm.
set up a budget. Like for whatever reason, it wasn't ready yet. But now that I am, I'm like, oh, why didn't anybody tell me this?
Right. um, that's funny, and I want to actually get into how credit cards are working into your plan now. But another question I had for you, now that you're speaking about it, also is so you have this, you need a budget, and it's giving you your template for how much you can spend and all that stuff, how much is going in and out. Does it also, or do you do this on the side? Do you have projections? As like, okay, when I'm 65, I should be this much in debt. I should have paid off this much by that time, given my income's the same. Do you do projections like that, or does it do things like that?
Um, it doesn't really that I've delved into, but I have been doing that kind of thing with Layla, my coach I've been working with.
Hmm.
Um, So, and I think we're probably going to redo them because there was a lot of like, we started and had projections and like goals for like having X amount saved by, what, or having debt paid off. But just in the course of this last few months, especially, there have been a lot of like, like I like I'm still like discovering things that I'm kind of hiding from myself, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And I feel like I'm starting the year in a really good place where I'm like, okay, like there's nothing that I'm saving for later anymore. Like I had a business
Hmm.
credit card that had a balance on it, and somehow in my mind I was like, well, that's business credit card, like that's a different thing. And
Hmm.
just like in the last month or so, I was like, no, that's not a different thing. Like that is also your debt. Like put it in the
Yeah.
pile. So there's just been little things like that that kind of have shifted where my goals need to be. But that kind of thing is helpful, like
Hmm.
projecting. Um, but I'm not sure I have a solid grasp on it, considering kind of having made some shifts and everything going into the new
Yeah.
year.
Gotcha. I just thought that would, yeah. I was thinking like if I'm in that situation, what would I do? I probably would. I would just go crazy with the projections. I'd probably project the most conservative outcome, like okay, I'll be out of debt in 10 years, and then I'll just like do everything possible to make up extra income. So it's just like I don't even consider the extra income that maybe comes from anything else, and that'll just be icing on the cake. That's pretty interesting. I wanted to also ask you because of course a lot of us, you watch the channels, you're in this kind of space too. The
Yes.
points and miles game. So how did you get to be where you are now? So now you've kind of pretty much got a handle on your budgeting. The debts are now going down and stuff like that. But how did you kind of shift that to kind of being in the points and miles game, kind of like what a lot of people are doing in this space? And now you have, like I said, the Boo Business Plus, Gold Card, I think Capital One Card. How did you kind of shift into this space?
Um, it's really, I mean, I think it's from watching YouTube, and I just kind of love fiddling with that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and like, uh, I think two parts of it. Watching YouTube credit card people kind of made me realize, like, oh, you really actually can bring in like income. I mean, it's income from cashback points, all that stuff. And then
Hmm.
I had my little phase of like trying to do that while carrying a balance, which once it was
Hmm.
YNAB that actually showed me, like, once I started budgeting, I was like, oh my God, this is how much money I'm paying in interest every month.
Hmm.
This doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
um, so I had that little phase, and then kind of getting out from under that, and I consolidated those credit card debts that were maxed out. Then I had good credit again,
Hmm.
and I was able to get more credit cards. And but I had to really, like, really stay on top of myself. Like, no, this isn't a $3,000 credit limit. Isn't money. It's not money. It's debt. Like, if you use this card, they're loaning you. Like, it's one of those things that feels so silly to be telling a credit card person that, like, but it was really hard for me to be like, no, stop. Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you just get to spend this, but
Hmm.
you can leverage this credit if you plan properly. Um, so I got more and more into that stuff, and I'm also a little impulsive, so I have a lot of credit cards.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but it's going to be an interesting year because I got a platinum card this year too, and it was
Really?
fully impulsive and probably not the best choice. Although, like, as I'm looking at, I put a spreadsheet together to kind of see like what I got out of the platinum card as a non-traveler this year,
Hmm.
and with sign up bonus and all that kind of stuff, I came out ahead. But it's gonna be. I think I'm gonna, as my year with that card approaches, I think I am gonna really break it down and do a video like, okay, I'm this person with all this debt. Here's my platinum card that I've had for a year.
Hmm.
Here are the numbers. What's the verdict? Should I keep this card? Does it make sense? I have a feeling the answer is going to be no. Like, I feel like, but you never know.
Probably. I probably would, just because I'm even considering it.
Yeah,
Just like I'm like, 695. I'm like, oh,
and
it came around a couple months
yeah,
ago.
and that's the thing I was talking about earlier, where it's like, well, I must be doing okay because look, I have a platinum card. Like, no,
Ah,
those two things don't
interesting.
match. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that is, like, I'm gonna have to get over that in my head. I think of, like, you know what, like,
Yeah.
this isn't. You're not in a place where this makes sense. And it's morally neutral
Mm,
that you shouldn't have a platinum card right now, but you're going to need to go ahead and close this.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I hear that, and I think that's actually in the credit card space. A lot of people talking up the platinum card, um, and I don't know, just has an allure about it. Amex really does really well with marketing. People market it very well on YouTube, so everybody and their mother ended up getting a platinum card. I mean, I got it at like 21 or 22 years old. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, I should have that card.
Yeah.
22, like you just have a 680 credit score and you get approved. Nice. Like, wow.
Yeah. And it's, I
And
mean, they really, I don't know if it's them or like I'm sure it's their marketing, but when I got the card, I was like, it's a whole new life. I have I went through a period of like, now I'm going to do all this
yeah.
traveling. I'm going to get these fancy things. And then ultimately
Hmm.
I was like, but you're paying off debt. You can't do those trips, even with the benefits. Like, it doesn't make sense to like spend
Yeah.
money on these trips, even at a discount. Like, you're still spending money that isn't in your budget.
Absolutely. One thing I'm reminded of in the comment section on a video, you commented on one of my videos, and I made a reply. Um, Pretty sure this happened. Maybe I'm making it up. I don't know. But I mentioned to you, you said something about you accrued a good amount of points, and I think I made the suggestion like, huh, why don't you cash out certain points? Like I think I mentioned like the Amex debit card that gives you like zero point 0.8, so a little less than the
Oh,
one
that's
cent per
right.
point
Yeah.
that strives for. To like take all of your Amex points and to take that to pay off debt. And I thought that would be interesting because myself, like I've accrued, over my platinum card, Charles Schwab, Amex Gold and Green, just over the last 5 years. Um, I was able to accrue like 400, 500,000 Amex points. And I was like, well, if I just like got the Charles Schwab card or if I had an Amex debit card, I can pretty much cash out all those points for about 4 or 5 grand that I could use to pay off debt. Maybe, I thought that was maybe interesting, and I don't know. I was just wondering, would you consider doing that at all?
Yes, and in fact, that did happen. I remember that exact conversation,
Okay.
and I went and looked at the website, and I already have a business checking with Amex, so they won't let you also have a personal.
Yeah. Oh wow. Gotcha.
Yeah, but I did do the like cardinal credit card people sin of cashing in my points and used it
Really?
to like, yeah, like I came to a point where, I had that in my mind. Like everybody says, don't do this. It's the worst way to get value. And it is, but I had to kind of like back up and look at like, um, that my goal isn't like to maximize these points right now.
Yeah.
My goal is to not be in debt.
Hmm.
So it made sense from that standpoint to like, you know what? Cut your losses, cash these in, and getting myself caught up on my like monthly day-to-day finances so that
Yeah.
and like not even when I was paying off my statement balances in full, the next month I was still paying for the previous month's expenses, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yeah.
And somehow like it was making it easier for me to overspend. I don't know if that makes sense. Because I was like, oh, I'll just pay. I don't have to pay this till next month.
Yeah.
So I wasn't in that place where I had like money always to pay my credit cards off at any time. So cashing in those points kind of helped me get out from under that. So I feel like the the effect it's having on my day to day finances is going to be a bigger benefit than
Hmm.
waiting and using those points for something else.
Gotcha. I think it's smart. That's definitely something I would do. And now it's reminding me, like, if you already have a platinum card and you kind of have a handle on it, and I mean, you're likely to cancel. I wonder if it would be beneficial to get like a super high, because you already have a business account with them. Get like a super
Mhm.
high welcome offer on the Amex business platinum. I think haven't we seen like over 150K point, or maybe 150K, 180K, something like that. Possible
I
if it was even possible to hit the spend, and then that would be because then you could cash that at 1 cent per point, and that would be like $1,800.
Oh, I didn't know you
Um,
could do that with the business platinum.
yeah, if you have a business checking account and a business platinum, I
Oh, of
believe you can
course.
cash out
Yeah.
at 1 cent per point, which is almost double the point six that they give you for. So that would be interesting. Like if you already have a
Yeah.
handle on, it, you're like, yeah, I could do that no problem, and the spend no problem. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
But
I
again, I
feel
think
like
it's like 15K spend. It's a lot.
that's what I was gonna say. Like, am I? And I'm pretty like
Yeah.
specific about only using my business cards for business expenses, and I don't
Yeah.
spend that much on my business stuff.
Yeah.
Or I could get that and buy like. See, this is what could happen.
Yeah.
I definitely need to upgrade my home studio. I could spend that $15,000 really
Oh my
easily.
god.
Yeah, no problem. I'm
No
in.
problem. Lord. Oh god. Well, you know what I've been finding interesting recently is I've been putting my rent. So okay, whatever. Maybe not financial advice, but for everybody. But I've been putting my rents on a Chase Ink card, which will in turn give me by the end of 3 months 90,000 points. But that too, you can cash out for money for $900, or by the end of the spend, probably $1,000. So and
Yeah.
it's a no annual fee card. So I'm like, I wonder if there's like, if you just put your rent on it or whatever you're paying, and just keep putting that on the card, like just because you have business cards already, you have an established thing. Maybe you can just get a bunch of inks for like the whole year. And at least that's a cool 4 grand at the end of each year if you hit the high welcome offer and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and that's like with no extra spend. That's just me putting rent on it and then groceries, which non-business spend, of course. Yeah. But
Yeah,
you
but
know,
then like
yeah,
rent is sort of a business expense because
yeah,
I claim like a percentage of my rent because I have a home office.
yeah,
So if I'm like, okay, that fits my like weird rules with myself about like, no, 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 this is only business
yeah.
expenses. But
Like I'll be a little more shiesty with it,
yeah,
but
I don't know why. Like,
until
it's funny that I've been so like screwed up with my finances all these years, but I'm like, nope, nope. This one rule is the one that I have to follow. Like, it doesn't make sense.
that's funny. Hmm. So that's interesting. Um, so you have the credit cards now, and I've seen your budgeting templates, so they're all coming down. Um, is there anything that you've also changed in the last, even just from starting the channel, like maybe people's advice and stuff? Is there like anything else that you like in your life that you've changed as far as maybe income, or savings, like things that you stop buying maybe just because you've been so aware of how much you're spending and all?
Um, and as far as the, well, I did stop. I used to go to my barber every month, which might be interesting because I have a totally shaved head. But like he trim my beard and stuff, and that was like sort of expensive. And I had that on my budget. And someone who I actually knew from outside of YouTube sent me an email like, "Cut your own hair. Like you're just shaving your head. Why are you spending $80 a month to go to the
Hmm.
barber?" Like,
Yeah.
so I'm still back and forth with that. I like skip. I've been doing it alternating months because I really
Yeah.
love going to see my barber. Like he's really cool.
Yeah.
um, and I, yeah, so that's one thing that I'm like, doing differently.
Hmm.
I'm at a point with cutting back on expenses that I've cut out all the obvious things. Like
Hmm.
I'm down to just like maybe a couple of streaming things, and some of them are covered by like the platinum card
Yeah.
digital thing. So if I cancel that card, I'm gonna have to come to terms with that. um, so the thing that's tough is like the places that are left to cut out are like my groceries, which I'm like, I don't want to like, you know what I mean? I stopped
Yeah.
getting takeout as much. Like, why do I have to cut this now too? And maybe I don't have to, but yeah, I mean, I think I was almost already that place when I started my YouTube channel. So like
Hmm.
the barber is really the only thing I could think of. I feel like there
Hmm.
was one more thing that friend told. Oh, he told me about. He was telling me to close all my credit cards, which is advice that people often get when they're in debt. Like you got to cut up all your cards.
Yeah.
And he said you're barely going to get anything from those points. And I was like, huh? I've been tracking my expenses and my points this whole year. How much did I make this year? I can't remember how much it was, but I was
Yeah.
able to tell him like, well, honestly, I like cash back on these. I only counted the cards that I wasn't paying interest on, um, which actually none of them are right now.
Hmm.
But it was
Nice.
like at least a few $100s. I was like, this isn't nothing. Like it's not gonna like pay off everything, but to me, it's worth it to like learn how to do this.
Yeah. Especially since you're not, at the stage where you're overspending, like you're keeping track of everything. I mean, three hundred
Yeah,
dollars is, at least for me, it's like 2 months of groceries. So it's like
yeah.
that's that's very you know usable for sure.
Yeah.
All that
Or I
cash
could
back.
go to the barber like 4 times, 4 or 5 times with that.
Right. Right. Actually, let's see. Um, Icarus came in. Did you get evicted from your test? Unreal. Can't say that about me. That's sacrilegious. Mini on
Oh,
Cam says I go to the barber on Mondays for senior pricing.
oh, that's so cool.
Hmm.
I'm almost 55. I'm gonna start getting, like, old people discounts, which feels like a mixed blessing.
And everything, and that the value is there. Yeah, it just leads me to think like um, all the different things. Oh, MR said I'm 45, but I joined AARP when I was 30. It's only $12 a year, and most hotels and travel related things have discounts.
I really should do
Interesting.
that.
Considering there's ageism now, right? So you can join AARP at any age now. Right?
Yeah.
So they tried to sign me up at AT&T.
I had a moment on, TikTok that I was watching this, like, something came up on my For You page, and
Yeah.
there was some, like, quiz about, like, 80s music. And I was watching like, oh my God, this channel is so great. I love this. What is it? It's the AARP. Like, I was
Oh
so
my
psyched.
god.
And I was like, no, what does this
That's how
mean
you know.
about? Yeah, it's no,
That's
that's
how
how I
you know
know.
you made it too far.
Yeah. And
That's so
their targeting is going really well. Like they did the exact type right video because I followed them.
That's funny. Yeah, Icarus agrees. AARP has no age limit. Any age can join. Yep. Yeah, and I don't know. It just leads me to think because, like I told you, like all throughout my years of growing up, just seeing money issues and whatnot, I always tried to find the cheapest solution. And just off the top of my head, a few things. I don't know if anybody in the chat or if you have any other budgeting tactics, but one was cutting your hair. You reminded me of that. So I've been cutting my own hair too for like I don't know, 12 years now. I think since I'm like 13, I think, or 12. My dad got me a kit, and he was like, just figure it out, and I did eventually. Um, and that is a good amount of money, even though back then it was maybe $20. Who knows
Yeah.
how much it is now? It's probably crazy. Also, turkey and rice. That's like been the thing, but I remember it actually graduated. Um, it used to be turkey and rice, and that was like living lot large. Like the turkey burgers that you get for 11.99, and it's like six of them, and then rice, which was like I don't know, I could get a month's worth of rice for maybe $10-15. And then I was like, man, the turkey is just too much. I'm kind of going bankrupt on this. So then and then I went to chicken, where like not breaded, not nothing, and you could just cook plain chicken. I used to eat that like that, and then I was like, this is too much too. And then I researched. I was like, what's the cheapest food you could buy? Ended up being pork because you could feed pork anything.
Yeah.
There's no actual regulation, so that ended up being the cheapest. Also, probably the most unhealthy. So I would then buy pork and rice, and eventually I went back to turkey burgers. Went back to my lavish lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um, and then reusing like garbage bags, like getting like stealing a bunch of Target bags before they banned it in New York. Now you can't get any plastic bags, right?
Well, they're still using like that ban like hit right before COVID.
Uh,
And then I think somehow throughout COVID, people were like, "Oh, we're using plastic bags,"
oh, really?
and like they're like the bodega on the corner from me uses them still.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
delivery people still use them. So, I mean, grocery stores, like bigger stores, I think that are more like on the radar, got rid of them. But little corner like bodegas and delis and stuff, they still kind of have a stock.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a remaining stock, or they're just stocking it up and not telling anyone that
Probably.
they're still
Yeah.
buying them.
Maybe. It's like those incandescent light bulbs that everybody was hoarding in their garages.
Yeah.
That they stopped making. um.
It's funny when you say
Hmm.
this kind of stuff, it's reminding me like I thought it hit me when you were talking about cutting your own hair, that I still have this kind of thing. I'm like, oh, I don't have to cut my own hair. I'm not poor. Like there's
Hmm.
this part of me that's like, oh, I make enough money so I can go to the barber shop.
Uh,
And I have these like gut level things and I buy expensive trash bags. I buy like I'm having a revelation here about things I can cut. I have
yeah.
one of those like simple human trash cans, and I ordered
Hmm.
their brand of bags that are made to fit precisely inside the bags. And they're
Yeah.
not that expensive, but when I think of things like when I say like I don't know what else to cut out, like this is a thing. And I still have this inner voice that's like, oh no, you could get those good trash bags because you make enough money for that. And I'm
Hmm.
having like, okay, slam on the brakes. You do, but you also have these other priorities. It's helping me to say, instead of like I can't afford it, it's helping me to say like, oh, I have a different priority with that money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I'm
Yeah.
just calling myself out for having those naughty, dirty thoughts.
For sure, and I'm not saying like I've been healthy my whole life mentally either. I just, I think I just have a thing with just like, am I paying more than I need to pay? And I just get really upset with that. I remember one time I was buying a gift for my now wife, like literally within a few months of dating. I went to one of those mall bodegas, and it was like a nice jewelry set. I think it was like maybe 250. And keep in mind
Uh-huh.
that this was like my perfect era of no like spending nothing. Like 100 a month was my, not even, maybe 90 a month was as much as I was spending. It was like crazy. But I remember I remember talking to the girl who was working at the bodega, and I was like, they was like, oh, we're running a discount right now, like 30% off, but it will only go off on like the cheapest item, not the most expensive one. And I didn't believe her. I was like, I bet if you put that code in for like the most expensive item, it'll come off. Because I was buying like two separate things. I said, can you just run it again? But like put this in first. And I literally was so annoying. I did it like 3 different times. And eventually I was like, all right, if it goes this way, I'll just pay the full price. But
Wait, yeah, it's good though. It's a good way to be, I think. Uh, you were glitching out for a second, but I think you're back. Or maybe I was glitching. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's kind of a good way to be. I mean, it's balanced with all that stuff, right? Balance, like finding a balance with all those kind of things.
so it's like, and then people call me a hypocrite. You know, you buy a Tesla. Maybe if I had spent, it's like you end up in the same place. I was paying insane insurance prices in New York. I don't need that. I could just sell it. You know, I'd be fine. Um, but
You were you were just buffering for a while. I think you're back on track though, but
I'm good now. Okay.
yeah,
Um,
Icarus is saying that you were yeah,
oh, buffering.
glitching
Oh
out a little
yeah.
bit. Yeah. It
Oops.
seems normal again.
Okay. Cool. Let's see. Your person Minnie on cam said, yeah, Ramit talks about the money dials where you spend lavishly on the things you love going to, like the salon. That's for her.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then instead of growing out of my hair, I keep it low cut with the barber and buy wigs. Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, who cares?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
save
so
some money,
cool.
buy some wigs.
Yeah, that's for me.
I'm down
She's
with
talking
that.
about the book I mentioned. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I guess I'm in a place with some of that. Like, I love, he talks about spending lavishly on the things that you love, but I'm having this moment recently that I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe even that isn't exactly what I should be doing right now. But it's hard. I mean, I think I need
Hmm.
to some degree, but yeah, it's hard to tell.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I wonder if there is just yes. We've talked about that offline. Like he's like, you gotta suffer. I would say if, but I want, you know,
Uh, I think you're back. You were buffering some more. I caught part of what you said.
oh God, forget it. You just talk.
Were you saying it sounded like you? I heard you mention Caleb Hammer and like the idea of suffering because you're in debt,
Yeah, I was like,
basically.
it's like I was like, people would look at my life early on and say, "Oh, maybe he was suffering," but I was perfectly content the way I was living, even if it was 90 a month, whatever. You know, living at home, obviously. So how much could you be suffering? But I'm like, is that? Do you need to do that, or could you have both? You know,
I mean,
like, probably has to be.
I feel like it's a balance. I was a Caleb Hammer fan in the beginning, but I think as I've been like kind of learning some things, I'm less and less excited about his approach. But I think that it's that like, and I think I have to get to this place with just how I think of myself. But I want to get away from feeling like I'm punishing myself for being in debt. Like, but and instead really look at like, okay, so this is my goal, and this is the amount of money that I have to work with. So this doesn't fit, and that's okay, I guess. So I think there is this like kind of mentality, and I think it's sort of what kept me um, stuck in and not able to move out of it was this feeling of like, oh, you've been bad, like you've been very naughty with your money.
Hmm.
So now, like, to turn it around, I thought I would have to like just cut everything out and you can't have a life. Well, that didn't sound like what I wanted to do either. And I'm making this work somehow. So why don't I just keep doing this messed up way of doing my money? Because now I can still buy stuff. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that kind of middle area of like sacrificing with an eye on like the benefit of that instead of it being, like you have to do this because you've been bad with your money.
Hmm. That's a good point. Yeah, I think that's a good point and a good mental shift. I bet for a lot of people. That's a very good point. Oh my God, I was buffering like crazy.
I think you're back. It seems back to totally normal now.
Okay, good. I just wanted to recount some people, and then I wanted to ask you a couple fun questions. Icarus said, "True story. Restaurants kept giving me stacks of napkins. I'd throw away one, decide to collect them. Haven't bought paper towels in 10 years. Wow." Yeah, that's my dad. He's done that. Um, Wigs could be thousands of dollars, but it's cheaper than female hair salons, says Minnie. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Um, hmm. Josh. Oh, Josh, I saw your comment earlier too. What'd you say? I don't know. YouTube. He said that the Tesla's jamming my Wi-Fi. Yeah, honestly. MR said MC Hammer could have really used Caleb Hammer, and he didn't understand money at all when he was younger.
Oh, yeah.
What's like your favorite movie?
Favorite movie?
Yeah.
I love it. This is like the most depressing movie ever.
Oh my gosh.
I love that your fun question is like, oh, there's this heartbreaking movie I love. It's a movie called Central Station. It was like
Hmm.
an indie film it came out in the 90s. For some reason I just love it. It takes it's, I don't even want to tell you the plot because it's like so it's sad but also uplifting. I want to think of like my favorite like fun film. Uh I surprisingly loved Christmas Story. I just watched it again. I was a little like, I don't want to watch this, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is great. That's my most recent fun favorite movie. Yeah.
For me, it's planes, trains, and automobiles. Like,
Oh, that is so
uh,
good too.
I love watching it. John Candy's the best.
Yeah.
um, what about so I guess you are a reader. Do you, what's your favorite book?
I go through the weirdest phases with reading where I either like really get into reading for like 6 months and I read tons of books, and then I
Hmm.
go like 10 years without reading books.
10 years. Well, that's all right. I went my whole life with that. I haven't read a single book yet, so that's
Yeah.
fine.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that my current favorite is that Ramit Sethi book, I Will
Hmm.
Teach You to Be Rich. Yeah, I love the way he approaches everything in a very like conversational, non like because for me for a long time, like finances felt like something that other other people did. You know what I mean? Like investing, all that kind of stuff. Because I like
Hmm.
worked for myself all these years. I was like, I don't know what
Yeah.
any of that is. So he has a really easy approach to how to handle that stuff. Oh, I love both of those movies. Yeah, I haven't seen Memento. I saw it back when it was in the theater. I think one of us is buffering.
Actually. Oh
It's
my
really
god.
interesting. Memento is like
No,
just the general idea. It's about this
you
guy
good?
who loses his like when he goes to sleep, when he wakes up the next day, he doesn't remember anything that happened the previous day. That's the general point of that movie. It's really a trip.
Like Groundhog Day?
I think so. But now it's been so long since I saw it. I'm worried I'm saying the
Well, I
wrong
guess no,
breakdown. Yeah.
opposite.
Oh yeah, because
He remembers that. That's
yeah.
right. Yeah. God, I'm on and off. Oh, Jesus. Am I good for you?
Yeah, you are, but you have been kind of on and off for me the last few minutes.
I'm never doing it at a Hyatt again.
These Hyatts.
Yeah. Saying I'm buffering too. All right. Maybe just one more question. Because
Okay.
if I can't make this connection work. Last question is, what was the happiest moment of your life?
Oh, this is kind of a good one. I think I don't know if this is the first one that comes to mind. I'm a performer and pianist, and I like often like done music directing for other people's shows and play the piano for other people. It was probably around 10 years ago. I decided I was going to write my own show, and I did like a reading of it at this church, West Village in Manhattan, called Judson Memorial Church. It's a really great place for artists. And a bunch of people came, and it was this weird like thing that I was doing, kind of performance art storytelling with electronic music, and I had two string players, and no one had heard any of this stuff before. I had just been practicing it in my apartment, and I was like the whole beginning of it. I was like, do they even is this good? Like I had no way of knowing like if I was just doing like this terrible, because no one had given me any opinion about it. There was one point where I had like a funny little line that I had in the show, and everybody laughed, and I was like, oh, it's working. This is working. So that's the moment I think of.
That's amazing. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's great. I think with the connection and everything, that'll be a good thing to go out on. Do you have any other parting wisdom or advice for anybody out in the world that are watching right now?
In terms of debt and spending and all that kind of stuff that I'm trying to turn around, I think my current, like, most important message to myself and maybe anyone else is like, you're gonna screw up when you're trying to like get on track. And the most important thing is just to like show back up the next day and like, okay, so I screwed up yesterday. How am I gonna fix that? And how do I keep moving forward?
Love it, man.
That's it.
Love it. Thank you so much for doing this with me, man. Even though the horrible connection.
Yeah, I think it's just added an extra layer of excitement.
Right. Exactly. But thank you so much for being on with me today and showcase. Of course, if you guys, you can probably see at the bottom, pin comment. This is your channel. If you want to go follow along Michael's journey, and of course, there's other videos as well. But a lot of good, insightful stuff on his life and whatnot. Thank you to everybody who's here. So Icarus, MR, Josh, of course. We also got Minnie. Thanks for coming in. Retrospective, Vinny Boombots, Marita, and wait, there was one more person I wanted to mention. Well, Joe Bird, of course, and Woodsy. Appreciate all you guys for being here. Of course, Keith with the 50 spot. My God, you guys are crazy.
So nice.
Right. But again, thank you guys for being here every single week. Really appreciate you guys, and Michael again for being here. And I guess I'll see everybody next Saturday.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was really fun to do.
Awesome, man. What's the name of your channel so we can follow you? Yeah, if it's not there, Midlife Money Moves, right?
Yeah, Midlife Money Moves.
Yeah, I'll put it in the pinned comment of this VOD when it goes down. And it's in the description, yeah. Thank you, Josh. And Cesar. All right. Take care, everybody. Take care, Michael.
All right. Bye.
See ya.